Jody, calm down. Calm down. We're gonna freak her out.
I don't want to freak her out.
Stop.
She's awesome.
Everybody calm down. Oh my God, I'm so nervous.
You're the most freaked out person here, Steph.
I am not freaked out.
Yes, you are.
A little bit.
It's a very
We're going to have to
big
positive
booking.
train you as well.
She is multiple Emmy Award winning. She is a legend. Soledad O'Brien joins us now.
Woohoo!
All right, I freaked out. Hi.
Legend.
Oh, hi.
I like that.
Oh,
Legend
hi.
sounds a little old, though. I might, legend? Legend is what you win some legend thing literally 3 years before you there.
I loved a while ago when you said someone introduced you as formerly from CNN. You're like, can we move on? I have Soledad O'Brien Productions.
Today, now this sounds old, but young people today, someone will say, you worked at CNN? Like a whole other life.
Yeah.
They only know me through Twitter and Instagram, which I kind of love.
We were saying we've met, and I'm like, when someone says, I was on your show, I'm like, you'll have to be more specific about which canceled show you mean. But it's probably 20 years ago, right? We met somewhere. Yeah.
Yep, exactly right. Well, we've both been in this for a minute, so at some point you're like...
Yeah. Oh, as Mark Levin always says about me, I've been up and coming for 20 years. Bastard person. My point, Soledad, is that you have an amazing documentary. HBO debuted today. It's today and tomorrow, right? HBO and HBO Max.
Yeah.
And I've seen clips
tonight.
Yeah, but I've seen clips of it. It is amazing. It is called Black and Missing. Focuses on all the missing people of color whose stories go untold and uncovered. If I could like all of your tweets 1,000 million times, I would. Like, is there something beyond like? But because you're just. But again, this is something that. It's become a joke, missing white lady syndrome, but it's not a joke. And you show these real people and these real families. Just talk to us a little bit about the whole idea and the process of doing this.
Yeah, one of the things that was sort of very surprising for me in the documentary, in this second episode, a former news president, we're interviewing. Dateline is doing a story on missing white woman syndrome, and they sit down with the news president of NBC, who says, race is not a factor in how these stories are covered. And you literally you just want to fall out of your chair, right? Because it's so obviously a factor. In fact, I think most people would agree. I don't think that's a particularly controversial statement. People understand it. And you think, well, if you're the news president and you literally do not believe what the data clearly shows, that Black people and people of color don't get the coverage, and you run the place, right? This is a bit of the problem. And so, we wanted to really examine what Gwen Ifill would call the missing white woman syndrome, which is not just that news organizations go crazy when there's a young, attractive, usually blonde white woman who's missing. And by the way, a horrible tragedy for any family that's missing a person. I used to think, I can't imagine how a parent gets up in the morning, it's the most horrific thing. There's a whole bunch of other people.
My best friend when I was growing up is still missing. She went missing when we were like 21 or something and has never, so I know what you mean about there's a special pain. Just someone that there's no resolution.
Cannot imagine how you live with a gaping wound. And even if it's, closure, there's no closure, obviously. But I think that same gaping wound exists for people who are missing loved ones, but no one seems to care. The media doesn't want to cover it. That their loved one, because they're not white and young and pretty, they're young and pretty and Black, girls of color often, just the media doesn't think that that's much of a story. And so race is a factor in that coverage. I think someone said to me when we started working on this doc with the Gabby Petito case, like, oh my gosh, the timing is amazing. And we've been doing this doc for 3 years, we're working on it. So it's sadly, it's always good timing, right? We could, Lacey Peterson, Elizabeth Smart, Natalie Holloway, all horrific, heartbreaking stories that deserved a ton of attention. But it is a zero-sum game. And when you have this syndrome, which is not just the news organizations going crazy, but also people inspired, right, to go leave their homes and fly to Aruba and look for Natalie Holloway, which was incredible. I know the parents were just so incredibly grateful. It's so painful to the families who feel like, why does no one care about my loved one? because we live in a poor community, because she's not attractive to you, you don't think she has value.
Right away, I'm marinated in the news, Soledad, and I didn't know until your special that cases involving missing black people remain unresolved 4 times longer than missing white people. I mean, that's really quite stunning.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination, right? I mean, the women of Black and Missing, the women who run the foundation would say community needs to be more active and more aggressive, that law enforcement needs to move faster. If you label someone a runaway, suddenly we're less interested in looking for them, right? If I say, hey, well, here's Jane Doe, she's run away, you think, okay.
But you make the point in the documentary that there's that presumption by the police when it's a person of color that, they must be a runaway.
And law enforcement is often very slow or sometimes even reluctant to really dive in and look for these young women and men sometimes. And then also, again, the media just doesn't give it the coverage. And so you have this kind of vicious cycle of those stories just go untold, even as family members are advocating. So what they decided to do at the Black and Missing Foundation was use their background in PR and in law enforcement to actually help families figure out how to navigate the system, what photo to use, what to wear on the air, what things to ask for, how to talk to the news media, how to get PR, how to do a missing poster. I mean, you think about it, you're like, well, wow. Right? You wouldn't necessarily know if you didn't actually know. And so they've been incredibly helpful to the families who are trying to navigate in a terrible time.
There's a part that you cover in there that it just like further heartbreak on top of heartbreak. You talk, distraught families frequently plead with those responsible. They just want to bring their loved one home to bury them. This sometimes involves making deals with the devil in which their loved one's killer receives a reduced sentence in exchange for revealing where they disposed of the remains. I don't know if you remember, Christopher Wilder was the serial killer. My friend was the first woman to go missing, and then he was killed in a shootout. So some of these families, some of the girls, including my friend, are still missing. So they'll never get that closure. But it really, what an awful pain on top of the original threat when you finally have to come to they're probably dead and then have to go through that again, right? I mean,
it's horrific. And again, closure was a word I had to stop using because the family members would very kindly but kind of exhaustingly tell you, there's no closure. Even if you are able to get the location of your loved one's body, I mean, it's not closure. It's just maybe you now are a step closer to feeling like you have some understanding and some peace for the person who you're burying finally. But it's absolutely horrible. And these families deserve the same intensity of search as everybody does.
I frequently feel like I am in a threesome with you, me, and Eric Bollert. Everything you say, you retweet him, and then I'm like, yes.
There is a point where you feel like you're stalking someone. You're like, I just like you. I'm not tipping over into the crazy. I need to block you now because it's too much.
Obsessed with the new puppy. I'm just everything about you. I'm like, what? But you do that amazing work that Eric Bollert does too. It's just and also you've been obviously on both sides, but in terms of media criticism, you're my pet peeve. Chuck Todd this last weekend, you were like, Chuck Todd is just not good at his job. I was like, yes, because it's just what has happened. So to journalism, there's never a follow-up question. There's never he let some Republican senator get away with saying the Rittenhouse victims, they were violent criminals that were all armed too. And it's like, no, plastic bag, skateboard. Do a little bit of pushback or something.
So sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's actually so painful for me sometimes that I only I'll retweet Eric because I'm almost like I just can't get involved. Dan Frumkin too is very good. Margaret Sullivan as well. Like they all do very thoughtful media analysis, and I'm more like, fuck these people.
Did she drop an F-bomb? You did.
She did.
Oh, that was fantastic. You dropped an F-bomb. We had to dump you. Oh,
that was fun.
You're so special. I need the publicity. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My mom was a big cursor too. So.
The video feed will love it.
Although English was not her first language, so she would curse totally wrong all the time.
That's awesome. Even
I
better.
have to tell her you can't use that word that way. Like that makes no sense.
You're like, I'm not even sure the FCC covers that.
Those are other people who do. Yeah, but there are other people who do really thoughtful analysis, and that is the problem, right? I think because media, especially our political media, when you frame something as a game, and you don't think of it as particularly important, or even that there are people. Like, I think part of my issue, and that I find so disappointing, is that I do so much coverage of like human beings. So however you feel about something, right? Human beings are impacted by these stories, by these policies. And it's been very disappointing that many people just think of it as like a football game.
Yeah, you said, I fear our nation's political reporters are not up to the challenge. We see them fail daily. I try to point out those who fail regularly. It's because I feel like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills all the time when we have just watched the near overthrow of the United States government. So there's that. There is an ongoing coup. There is a pandemic that, the last administration, it appears to me they willfully, killed tens of, it cannot be a more critical time for journalism to get it right, could it?
Even more basic than that, if someone lies to you, right? If someone cannot tell you who is president of the United States, if someone is lying to you, you just don't put them on air, right? The point, the goal of media for me is you're supposed to help inform people and educate them and explain things, right? So that's a pretty interesting mission. And that literally means that if someone who's coming on, listen, and politicians spin and they'll stretch and they'll lean into, but someone who is an overt liar does not deserve to be on the air. And the media has not figured out yet how to handle the rehabilitation of some folks who do really awful, very dishonest things and who admit it, right? And then actually continue on and get invited back to now become commentators. It's really pathetic. And I think it's because media is really competing with social media. And so this idea of informing, explaining, it's not that anymore. It's these little short nuggets of, in a nutshell, here's what Build Back Better means in 50 words or less. Well, that's not how it's supposed to work.
You retweeted Sam Stein, said, some fears from Dems here that unless the White House can penetrate conservative-leaning media, the Biden-led sales pitch around his agenda will be fruitless. And you said in part because the mainstream media doesn't actually do a good job covering it. I loved, was it yesterday? Yesterday you tweet, the CEO of Walmart thanks Trump, oh my God.
Oh God.
No.
Biden for solving the supply, helping, solve the supply chain thing. Oh, never mind, the shelves are stocked. And, I think yesterday you were like, hey, where's all my inflation reporters at, y'all? Like, it's just,
they don't exist, right? Because when Wolf Blitzer, who is a very nice man, I like Wolf a lot. He is a good human being. But when he tweets about high gas prices, it's literally at one particular station in Washington, D.C., which everybody knows is the station that's right near the car return place and that's right near, where the tourists go. That is literally the equivalent of me standing in Times Square saying, can you believe they need $35 for this T-shirt? You'd be like, well, why the hell are you in Times Square? Of course it's 30. Like, why are you buying a gallon of milk in Times Square? Why are you buying anything in Times Square? It's for tourists. But that's willful, right? Like, he knows that. Anybody in DC, I'm not from DC, and even I know it. So everybody in DC knows that. And so then you're doing the social media thing, right? You're grabbing a snapshot and not very honestly highlighting it and pointing out a thing that actually, is not really factually true. Yes, that particular one, but it's not indicative of gas prices. And so it's just deceptive, I think. And again, he's a good guy, but the media has become really, he's not the only one that lean into this sort of, bull creation in order to push a story and push a narrative. And it's just very disappointing.
And I do miss him saying, and now here's Soledad O'Brien. Don't mention how hot she is. That would be sexist.
Oh, stop
okay.
It.
I'm thinking it was his thought bubble. Okay.
Oh, stop.
I used to love how uncomfortable Jack Cafferty made him. But so the root of it is that both sides do it, right? Like when we have one congressman literally tweeting him slaughtering his colleague, it's just they let them get away with Republicans going, oh, well, Democrats do it too. Kevin McCarthy, oh, both sides. It's like, no. You tell me the examples of Democrats threatening to kill Republicans.
Again, I think it's when you frame it as a game, then, they did this and they did that. This did that, and you don't think of it in terms of how do I explain this behavior by this particular congressman? Because then I don't actually have to compare it to anybody else. I can just talk about this one person who said or did this one particular thing. Because again, my mission, my agenda is to actually explain why people do what they do to my audience, help them understand what's going on. Why did he threaten that? Who is this congressperson? Let's explain it. And the other thing I think that's problematic is people feel like, well, we have to cover this story. And yes, obviously, there are lots of stories that require coverage, I think, if you're going to do a good job. But there's no rule, there's no handbook that says, listen, you have to give an open mic to a congressperson or an elected official who's been deceptive and dishonest, and everyone would agree they lied about this thing. Kellyanne Conway should never have been invited back on anybody's newscast after she talked about alternative facts.
Right.
And
Thank you.
And Chuck Todd himself, he didn't say, oh my gosh, well, here on Meet the Press, the storied Meet the Press, we don't deal in alternative facts. We only deal in facts. And so if you're not going to deal in facts, then I'm going to have to ask you to leave the show.
Well, just the CNN headline, Rittenhouse is a latest example of a nation divided on guns, crime, and protest. And you said actually polling would disagree with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Polling would disagree with it, not divided at all. Overwhelmingly, people actually don't think that we're divided on guns. It's just not true. So, again, it's sort of the gun equivalent of driving to the Times Square gas station, right? Like, it feels a certain way. Look at these prices. It feels because people are yelling. It's the equivalent of having an epidemiologist on to talk about COVID and also, an angry mom. Well, guess what? You could hear from them, but they don't get the same platform and they don't get the same framing. It's one of the reasons we do a lot on my show, Matter of Fact, about science and NASA. We have NASA scientists on a lot. And I don't have a flat earth person on after.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Now let's go to Bob. He doesn't believe in space.
Okay, listen, let's cut to the chase. Do you want to host Meet the Press? Because the Steph heads are very much behind this movement.
I think so.
Yes. Tell me now if you want it.
And while I appreciate your efforts, you know what? I'm about to launch a radio show, and I now am doing Matter of Fact. And I like doing a very limited amount because I get to executive produce like our HBO project and work on all these other projects. So thank you for advocating it for me.
All right.
But you shouldn't because.
All right. Well, if you're going to be lazy, then I can't help you. But all right. Everybody watch the new documentary on HBO, Black and Missing. You're the greatest thing that's ever happened to mankind. Is that too much? Too much hyperbole?
No, I like it. Are you guys rolling on that? Can I get that?
Yes.
We'll send it for you after the show.
Send that to her. That's her new.
All my videos that.
That's your new ringtone.
Yes, exactly.
Love you. Please come back again soon. Please. Love you, Soledad. Thanks so much.
Soledad. Thank you.
For having me. Nice to see you guys. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.